week's Eclipse OpenJ9 community meeting. As usual, please add your name and affiliation so we have an idea of who's been regularly attending. Got our agenda before us. It's started from the previous agenda, previous week's call. If there's something that isn't on this agenda that you'd like to add in, please either chime in now or add it into the relevant section, and we'll tackle it when we get there. I'll pause for a second. Is there anything people want to jump to right off the top? No lightning talk this week, but if you'd like to give one, please reach out to me. We'll get it scheduled. Let's take a look at the recent end user issues. Looks like we have a couple that would have been open since the last one of these calls. JDK 8, JIT crash. So this looks like another fuzzer related issue. Is Daryl on the call? I don't see him. But it looks like Pete has added this to the 035 release, so it's something we're already tracking. Some discussion around this. Anything in this list that we need to call out or have some further discussion on in this call? All right, on that basis, we'll close this and jump back to the agenda. That brings us to the direction and the roadmap section. For the 033 release, Pete, I see you've updated this to say the M2 builds have not been published.
We published RC1 builds instead. M2 was late by the time they were triaged and ready for publish. RC1 was imminent, so we just published RC1 instead.
And our GA start was supposed to be July 19. Did we get that off on time? Started?
The GA did start, but we still have 3 issues that popped up when we were doing the summary builds.
Do we have a feeling on when these will be resolved?
So I'll go through them quickly. The first one's obviously just to update OpenSSL if we need to. Believe Sumru is going to ship with a back level 111p because 111q doesn't compile on Mac, but the 111q updates don't impact Sumru builds anyways, so it doesn't matter. So the next one, there was a problem when you're running on OSs and processors that support hardware compression for zlib. So we backported a change from JDK 17 to resolve that, and there's still some tests that are failing. And we're working through whether those are test issues or there's yet another problem. My feeling is we should just move it forward. We didn't have this fixed for the last release, and we've done what we can for this release, and we should just move it forward and keep working on it. The next one, array index out of bounds in a test. We saw this failure during testing of RC1, and then we ran a grinder and saw it fail 3 times out of 50 in the grinder. And that seemed hot enough to keep looking. So right now we're trying to capture some diagnostic files to see if we can figure anything out, but it's been tricky to capture the diagnostic files, so we're still working on that. Again, my feeling for this one is we're not going to be able to resolve it. It's hard to reproduce unless you run the entire JDK Security 3 suite. I don't know what impact it would have on a customer. It only happens when you're running jar signer to verify a jar. Doesn't seem like it should block the release, so I think we should move it forward. And then the last one, we put in some OpenSSL acceleration for elliptic curve key agreement, and one of the tests is failing, and it seems to be related to that. It looks like a regression, and I don't know enough about it. To me, it looks like since it's a regression, we need to fix it, but we're waiting for more information on that one.
Okay, so it sounds like two of these you're proposing we move forward, and one of them we actually have to address for this release.
I don't know if we have to address it, but we at least need somebody to say, it's not something that we need to fix for this release. So far, we don't have that.
So we're in a day-by-day slip at this point.
That's right.
Did that affect all releases, or are we able to ship, for example, 8 early?
So the elliptic curve change went into all versions. So I'm assuming that we've only got the test failure on one. I haven't tried to reproduce it on the other versions. But I'm assuming because the same change went into all versions, it affects all of them.
Speak. All right, that brings us to the Java 19 update. I watched the recording from the previous one of these, and it sounded like JDK 19 release we were going to delay and ship the 1901. Is that correct?
That's correct. It doesn't seem like we can be ready in time to ship 034 on the schedule we had. So rather than slip it week by week, it seemed better to just cancel that release and try to ship 1901.
Yeah, this is becoming a bit of a repeat process for us, unfortunately. Does it make sense then to take a look at the Java 19 milestone, or skip straight through to the 035?
Yeah, I don't think there's much point in looking at the milestone plan. We're still working on features, and we have at least 2, maybe 3 issues that I've tagged as high priority because I'm seeing them a lot when we run acceptance builds. And I know somebody's working on at least one of them and maybe has an idea of what's wrong.
If we look at the 035 release, intending to branch that August 26th, that gives us a month. Given that we're in sort of the usual holiday season, do we expect that we'll have enough support and people working on this throughout the next month to be able to make that date?
So I don't know that anything for 35 is a blocker at this point. I think the 7 VM issues were just, like moved in from the backlog and then moved forward. They could be moved back to the backlog or moved forward again. The JIT issues, we have quite a few of those were raised by a researcher, and we're working through those as fast as we can, trying to resolve them. And then there's some other things as well. I guess a couple of those I had marked as blocker, but we decided to move them forward. So I think I should just remove the blocker label. And then we have that test, the RCO21, which we decided to keep as a blocker a number of releases ago, but we've never been able to resolve it, and we just keep moving it forward. Seems a bit silly to have the blocker label on it.
Yeah, do we have an outlook on, or has it gotten any attention?
It gets attention on and off, but we haven't been able to get to the bottom of it. I don't think Darrow was able to make the call today, so last time he gave an update, I don't think we were able to figure it out. You could check with the latest written.
Yeah, this hasn't been touched in a month, basically.
Yeah, so even though it fails only 1 in 50 when you're doing a grinder, um, some days I don't see it, and other days it could fail 3 or 4 times on different platforms and different versions. So still does happen.
Strikes me as something we need to get resolved.
Yep, but we don't seem to be making a very quick progress. I mean, it's not the only intermittent failure we have. There's others that we are just ignoring. I guess we think they're maybe not real issues, could be test issues, but they fail fairly frequently.
That, it's not really a reassuring argument there, Pete.
It wasn't an argument. I'm just saying that that seems to be life. We have intermittent issues and don't have the resources to resolve them, I guess.
Right, then if we look at Project Loom, uh, Jack, do we have an update on that?
Yes, Dan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we have merged the basic continuation support, which includes create, run, and yield continuation properly. And that so far is working based on our minimum testing. We have proposed a new design by GAC to rework how we're going to do the entry and yield on a continuation to use the carrier threads ELS and cache the existing GPR register for the carrier thread and restore it when we yield. This way we do not have to restack a new interpreter instance every time we do the transition. Currently this is a work in progress PR. I expect it to be completed end of week.
When you say completed, is that reviewed and merged?
It should be ready for review by end of week.
Yeah, completed would be, merged and ready to build on top of.
Also, I discovered a issue with running the current carrier thread API, which is due to the fact that we've allocated the continuation class way too early. We initially put it in the required classes because we're not sure whether it will be used as part of the JCL bootstrap, but apparently it's not, so we have to delay the usage of it. This way, we make sure that all our variables are actually being properly initialized. Right now, it is having an issue because the Java access library that was being used as a static final in continuation is being initialized as a null, which is causing issues. So that one should be done hopefully today. That one should be ready for review hopefully today. I just need to run the full sanity test to make sure it didn't break anything else. And JVMTI, we're still working through the list. It's a quite big list, so we're gonna expect some delays on that. I know Eric and Bethany have been trying their best to go through that list, but we still have to go through item by item. I'm not exactly sure if the numbers here are up to date. I know the 5 handout is confirmed. There's probably around 4 to 5 work in progress at the moment.
Jack, the list shows
Yeah.
the most up-to-date state for JVMTR. So if you click on the link for the task list, then it will reflect the most up-to-date state. It will say which ones have been assigned and which ones are unassigned and which ones are completed.
Do we have a target date to have these all completed?
It's difficult to define the target data at this point, based upon how many are remaining. But at this point, I think 40% of the tasks are being pursued and 60% remain. And I think Jack missed about pinning support. Pinning support should be done should be merged by the end of this week. Back to you, Jack, for your update.
I suspect pinning might have to wait until the new transition design would have to be merged to have full pinning support ready, since that will change some aspect of how we do the counter increments.
Okay.
Yes. Other than that, we are planning to start running the JTREC testing suite against virtual thread as soon as the new design for transition has been merged to make sure that we're on top of the testing. In terms of GC, Lin has been going through the list of issues GC have been encountering, and he's been putting updates in on his side to verify that everything works with the new design. We currently don't have a date in terms of when the GC1 will be fully reviewed and merged. We expect it to be sometime, hopefully next week. From JIT side, last time Daryl mentioned that he has been working on a prototype for X, and he's pretty confident that it's not a major work for JIT team. Also, there's JIT members currently working on, I think, P and Z.
Sorry, I missed that piece of the JIT update. What was the?
So the only thing that requires JIT support from our current design is that JIT would have to support the increment and decrement of the pinning counters for callout and monitor enter exit. Daryl have mentioned that he had a prototype ready for X platform, and the JIT members are currently looking into adding the same implementation for P and Z. From what Daryl's prototype suggests, there shouldn't be a major issue with JIT work, so they're expecting this to be pretty quick work to be done. They just have to do the full testing to make sure it didn't break anything.
When you say pretty quick, are we talking a week, 2 weeks?
Daryl mentioned he was able to get the prototype done in a week, so I assume it should be like in a week or two to be all complete.
Okay. It would. I know we've had this discussion before, but it would be really good to really start to tie down some of these dates so we have a clear intention on when we expect this to be completed and ready to go.
Yeah. I will ask for an update from GC and JIT in terms of the work they're expecting, and I'll provide an update next week.
In particular, this August for testing and bug fixing.
Yes. So we're waiting for the new design to be reviewed before we start the testing, since that will be a major change in terms of how the transition will be done.
Okay, so you still expect this to start August? Are we talking early August, mid-August?
I'm expecting the testing to be started as soon as we merge the new transition PR, which I'm expecting to be merged by next week. So testing should also start next week.
It's just a little surprising that we're able to start testing at that level without JIT support with the GC design.
We're currently running all of the testing under Xint and no GC.
Okay. I think we will find a significant source of bugs that show up
Yeah.
later on. All right. Thanks, Jack. Cheng, is there an update on Panama?
Can you hear me then?
Yes.
Okay. So the code changes still keep going. Java parts, the first part in Java code already merged, and keep going on native parts. Updating code changes against GAX comments. I think on Z, they already submitted code change, and I'm hoping to add in test to verify their changes. Because demos out there, so I'm not sure other platforms how it goes. Yeah, that's about it.
Similar question for you in terms of, did the matrix, the per platform completion matrix, get created to be able to see where the platforms are, which ones are done, target dates for them?
I think it's already. I think it's in code changes already, and the power already done. Everything's out there, and on other platforms, I think it's Z. They're already done, and x6 and Axis for I'm not sure.
Okay, it would be good as the owner of this feature to make sure that you have that matrix. It tells you when all the platforms are completed and what the target dates are, so you can help ensure that this drives to completion for the release date.
Okay, I will check it there later.
Thanks, Cheng. Anything else on the 0.35 release that we should touch on? All right. Do we have an update from the adopt team?
I'm here, but nothing particularly exciting. We're just going through a release cycle. No unexpected changes so far for this week.
Stuart? Adam, is there an update on the infrastructure?
Not too much to say. Jenkins is acting up on a few pages when you save the config, so I'm just investigating issues there. We still don't have a solution for the Windows machines, the new ones. Still having intermittent compile issues, so we're going to try a new type of cloud infrastructure that IBM Cloud offers. That won't be for a couple weeks now because of holiday schedules. That's about it.
Thanks, Adam. Devin, is there an update on CMake?
No, not much new to report there.
Marius on the call. Don't see him. So we will skip over the JIT server date. Right, for MicroJIT, I guess the next meeting is the 28th. If anybody has more details on that they want to talk about, we can dive into that. Toby, is there an update on CRIU?
Right. So yeah, there's been some minor improvements to the way we handle issues when libcru is not available on the machine. So we're trying to encapsulate all of those checks inside the is CRU enabled API call, such that if it returns true, it means that everything from you've passed the correct command line options. We've been able to load and link the libcru library, and when you do request a checkpoint, you shouldn't have any issues from that perspective. The other thing is we started to ramp up the JDK 17 support. So I believe that is done at this point. There were a few issues with the new method handle implementation. That seems that the class specializer is acquiring global lock, which causes an issue if you try to do anything method handle related inside a checkpoint or restore hook. So we added the new annotation to alleviate that issue. The other thing is that we're currently doing a release on JDK 11. So this is the July early access release on 11. and we're planning to do early access on 17, likely in the next week or two. And then another one on 11 and 17 at the end of August. After that, we're going to start taking a look at what we need to do to enable CRIU by default. There are a few issues with testing. There's some flakiness with CRU itself on some of our machines, so we're seeing some issues when trying to create the restore process. Some threads can't be created because it clashes with certain IDs, likewise with process IDs. So we're investigating the use of CRU namespace restore, although that has issues as well. That's one set of problems we'll have to tackle. The other is we'll have to look into getting CRU set up on all Linux machines, which is going to be a challenge on the older kernels because some of the dependencies aren't readily available. So we'll have to first determine how to build the dependencies and then build CRU on those platforms. So there's a bit of work required to make it default, but that will be, after August, that will be the next thing we'll start looking at. And that's the update.
Stoby?
We can't get CRYU on Cent 6. At what point do we start looking at moving up to Cent 7? Is that an IBM decision or OpenJ9 decision or both, or is that a no-go at all?
So I think it's both. I've been planning to ask internal stakeholders to see if anyone needs support as far back as Cent 6. I think that's kind of like our minimum criteria. If the answer is no, then we can, try to find out if the broader audience needs it as well. At least that was my approach. I don't know about you, Dan or Peter. There's if we need to go any further than that.
Are you talking in terms of JDK 8?
Yeah.
And 11. 17 is on Cent 7, so we're fine there.
I think dropping support older releases on something as old as 8 is a little bit problematic.
I suppose the question is, does it actually cause normal operations not to work, or does it just mean CRIU wouldn't be available on that? It depends how it's linked with it, I guess. If you just can't use CRIU, that wouldn't necessarily be so bad.
Right, but if it changes what the base platform we have to build on.
Yeah, if it
that
affects the
may
build
change.
platform, yeah, absolutely. That's the question, I suppose.
I know Doc does some kind of thing for 17 where they compile on a mix of 6 and 7 somehow. I don't know how it works, but
No, on x86 we build on 6. On all the other Linuxes we build on 7.
okay, I thought there was something where you moved but still pulled in libraries from something else. I don't know.
No, we're not doing that. I know other providers do, but we don't.
Okay, so it is something. I wonder if that something is possible to have it so that if you want to run cry, you have to be on 7 because it's compiled against 7. But if you don't want to run cry, you can still get away on 6 somehow. I don't know. Don't know enough about how it works. So
Seems like an IBM decision to me. Like the OpenJ9 project still supports CentOS 6, and anybody who wants to build it themselves can build it on CentOS 6. And
Right.
if IBM wants to create Sumru builds on a newer version like 7 and stop supporting 6, that's an IBM decision.
That's an IBM decision, but we have the common infrastructure that runs on, that we're running in the open.
The open infrastructure doesn't have to change. We're building in a Docker image provided by Adoptium. That doesn't have to change. The open source project can continue to support 6.
I think we're setting that up for a conflict down the line where we will find that things either do or don't work on 6. People assume, something is available that's not. So we'll cause ourselves problems with build conflicts down the line if we do that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Pete. But well, that's legally true, but I don't know if that's a wise decision. But would that mean OpenJ9 cannot build and test CRY-U either then?
Sure, on 7.
Yeah, I guess.
It will mean that we can ship PRs that can't test certain features because they pass all the open testing and then get accepted into the IBM builds and fail with CRY-U without being able to validate that in the open. So, it's a choice IBM can make, but they're signing up for additional work doing that. So I think we're running ahead of ourselves a little bit here, though. But Toby, if you can figure out what the details are on what you would need and what the proposal would be, then we can start to look at exactly how the details shake out on that.
Sure, I can do that.
With no Daryl, I assume there's no update on the Mac M1 work?
Just something we discussed earlier on an earlier call. If we could resolve all the functional issues for 035, are there any objections to removing the early access tag, even though we don't have compressed ref support? We've just put out a XL build only as non-early access. Something to think about anyways. We don't need to decide now. I'm not sure we're going to be able to resolve the functional issues that are remaining for 035.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea because the compressed refs piece, I assume, is going to take quite a bit longer.
Right, as far as I know, that's not started.
Certainly seems like a useful approach to take, and we can incrementally add compressed refs and other features as needed afterwards. I want to think about it more, but I don't immediately see any issues with it. Are there any other business that we want to tackle this week? All right, then. Thanks, everybody, and we'll run the next one of these calls on August 2nd.
Thank you.